Namaste children. Hi. Let us discuss fifth lesson in 8th class social studies is forest using and protecting. Today in this video we will discuss tribal people and forest. Tribal people and forest. It is difficult to imagine the forest without people living and using. Children, it is difficult to imagine the forest without people living and using. Forest provide critical resource for the poor. Forest provide critical resource for the poor. In North coastal region of Andhra Pradesh, 20% of people use forest to collect the yet loads of fuel wood. In North coastal region, 20% of the people depend upon forest to collect the yet loads for fuel wood. Most of the people in Rayalaseema use forest for grazing. Most of the people in Rayalaseema use forest for grazing. 50% of the people in coastal region, 50% of the people in coastal region use forest for collecting the forest produce like beedi leaves, medicinal plants, bamboo, tamarind, honey and sell in the market. Tribal peoples are the most important people depend upon the forest for livelihood. These tribal people lived in the forest for several years and they protect the forest and they earn the livelihood from the forest. Tribal people are the most important people depend upon the forest for livelihood. They lived in the forest for several years. They protect the forest and earn the livelihood from the forest. 60% of tribals live in the forest are living in our state. The tribal use forest for food cultivation, for grazing the cow, sheep, goat, for collecting the fruits and tubers, to grow vegetables, to build shelters, and to collect small forest products like beedi leaves, medicinal plants, bamboo, tamarind, and honey. Unlike plain people, tribal peoples do not have private property on land. That is, the land used by the tribals not registered on the name. The land used by the tribals is not registered in their name. So unlike plain people, tribal peoples do not have private property. But the tribal peoples have right on using the forest. The tribal peoples had a right on using the forest. Before tribal use the forest, they consult the village elders. They consult the village elders. Consent means permission. Before tribal use forest, they get the permission from the village elders and do podu cultivation, or they use forest for grazing, or they use forest for gathering fruits or tuber, or they use forest to build shelter, or they use forest for growing vegetable, or they use forest for collecting small products like beedi leaves, medicinal plants, bamboo, tamarind, honey and sell in the market. As they do podu cultivation, they do not have fixed record of ownership of land. Okay, as tribals do podu cultivation in the forest, they didn't have fixed record of ownership of land. Why? Because means under podu cultivation, they cultivate the crops in one land for 2 or 3 years. After 2 or 3 years, they leave the land and select another land for crop cultivation. Yes, the tribals didn't cultivate the crop permanently in one land. They didn't have record of ownership of land. Once again, children, repeating this point, you may not understand. The tribal peoples do podu cultivation, so they didn't have fixed record of ownership of land. Why? Because under podu cultivation, they cultivate the crops in one land for 2 or 3 years. After 2 or 3 years, they leave that land and select another land for crop cultivation. Here, the tribal peoples didn't cultivate the crop in a land permanently. Because of this reason, the tribal peoples didn't have fixed record of ownership of land. As population increase in the forest, family also increase in the forest. Such families get permission from the village elders to use the forest for old cultivation. Before British rule, tribals treated forest as their own. Before British rule, tribals treated forest as their own. They treated forest as the sacred place. They use trees and animals without causing damage. Tribals used forest without causing damage. How? If the tribals need wood to build shelter, the tribals need some timber or wood to build their shelter. They cut the old trees. In the place of old trees, they plant new trees. In this way, they protect the trees in the forest without causing damage. For food, they hunt the animals. Which animals they hunt, you know? They hunt the aged animals. In the place of aged animals, they regenerate the new one. In such a way, they protect the trees, animals in the forest without causing damage. British ruled our country for 200 years. During British rule or under British rule, tribals lost the right over forest. When British ruled a country, at that time tribal lost their rights on forest. Tribal lost the rights over forest. When tribal lost the rights over forest area decreased rapidly. When tribals lost the rights over forest during British rule, forest area decreased rapidly at maximum extent. Why forest area decreased rapidly at maximum extent? Why forest area decreased rapidly at maximum extent during British rule? Why? Firstly, there is a great demand for wood. During British rule. Yes, there is a great demand for wood for building railways, ships, factories, mines, houses, furniture, and for paper industry. Forest area has been decreased. Once again, children, there is a great demand for wood for building railways, ships, factories, mines, houses, furniture, and for paper industry. This British government cut down the trees in the forest. British government cut down the trees in the forest and sold to railways, ship, factories, mines, houses, furniture, and for paper industry, and earned money and earned profit. This is one of the reasons for decreasing the forest area under British rule. The second reason is British converted forest land into tea plantation, coffee plantation, rubber plantation, bamboo plantation, eucalyptus plantation. As a result, forest areas decreased rapidly during British rule. Secondly, to control the forest from cutting off trees, British took several measures. In such a way, they should get benefit from the forest and they should protect the forest. That is, British control the forest from cutting off trees in such a way the British should get benefit from the forest and protect the forest. To protect the forest, to conserve the forest, to protect the forest, British government passed a law in the year 1864 and in the year 1878. Under this law, to conserve forest, to protect forest, Forest Department was set up. Even Nizam also made a law. Nizam also enacted law to protect the forest. The laws made by British put restriction on the traditional rights of a tribal. The law made by Forest Department during British rule. The law made by new Forest Department and the British rule put lot of restrictions of traditional rights of tribals. Under the new law, under the law enacted by the Forest Department, forest is divided into two parts: reserved forest, protected forest. Under a new law enacted by Forest Department, forest is divided into two types. One is reserved forest, other one is protected forest. Reserved forest means that is the forest nobody should enter. It is the forest nobody should enter. Such forests are called reserved forest. Protected forest means the people can enter in the forest for grazing the sheep, goat, cow, and for limited only. For limited. Okay, protected forest means the people can go get inside the forest for grazing the animal like cow, goat, sheep, for collecting fruits and tubers, and for doing some old cultivation, for growing vegetable, to collect egg loads of food. But there are some restriction protected forest. The tribals can go in protected forest, but they don't have right to cut down the large trees. They don't have right to cut down the large trees. They should not graze the animals beyond the limit. They should not graze the animals beyond the limit. Okay, children, once again repeat this point here very clearly. Listen now. Okay, the new laws enacted by Forest Department put restriction on traditional rights of our tribals and divide the forest into two types. One is reserved forest, protected forest. Reserved forest is the forest where people cannot enter in that forest. In protected forest, people can enter into the forest. People can go inside the forest at some extent, and they can do grazing. Okay, they can graze the animals like cow, sheep, goat. They can also collect fruits and tubers. They also can collect some egg loads of food. But they don't have right to cut down the large trees. The tribals don't have right for grazing cow, sheep, goat beyond the limit. We know most of the people in our country depend upon forest for livelihood. During British rule, most of the people depend upon forest for livelihood. British government didn't really take care of the tribals. When British ruled a country, British government didn't really care of tribals. They occupied the land used by the tribals, as the tribals didn't have patta or ownership records. When British government ruled a country, British government didn't really care of the tribals. They occupied the land used by the tribals, as tribals didn't have patta. Patta means what here? It is a document issued by government in which the name of actual owner of the land. Patta is a document issued by a government in the name of actual owner of the land. As tribals didn't have patta and ownership record, British occupied the land used by the tribals. For example, Kollam tribal practiced old cultivation in forest area. Gond tribal practiced settled agriculture in forest area. What kind of agriculture practiced by Gond tribal? Settled agriculture. What kind of cultivation practiced by Kollam tribals? Pod cultivation. Okay, yes, Kollam tribals practiced pod cultivation. They didn't cultivate the crop in the land permanently. They cultivate the crop for 2 or 3 years. After 2 or 3 years, they leave the land, they select another patch of land. Yes, they didn't cultivate the crop in the land permanently. They didn't get patta. They didn't have patta or ownership property on that land. Even Gond tribals also practice settled agriculture. Though they practice settled agriculture, they also cultivated the crop in a land for 2 or 3 years. After 2 or 3 years, they left the land and selected another land for cultivation. Here, Gond tribals, Kollam tribals, other tribals who live in the forest, as they didn't have patta or ownership of record, Okay, the land was occupied by the British during British rule. When a forest is divided into two types, that is reserved forest and protected forest. When the new law passed by Forest Department, under new law, Forest Department, under new law, Forest Department divide the forest into two types. One is reserved, other one is protected. When reserved forest is divided, okay, at that time, British government didn't notice the practices in the forest. When British government divide the forest into two types, that is reserved forest and protected forest. At the time, British government didn't notice the practices in the forest. In one stroke, tribal lost the rights on forest. In one stroke, tribal lost the right over forest. At last, okay, British officials, British government, or these forest department officials forced the tribal to evict from the forest. For British government or forest department officials forced the tribals to live away from the forest, to evict from the forest. At last, tribal peoples lost their home, they lost their land, they lost the region, and they become homeless children. They become homeless. Once again, saying children, under new law, forest department divided the forest into reserved and protected. When reserved forest is demarcated, when reserved forest is divided, British government didn't notice the practices of tribal in the forest. In one stroke, tribal lost the right over forest. And forest department officials forced the tribals to evict from the forest, to live away from the forest. At last, tribals became homeless. To earn income, British government gave forest land to zamindars and landlords after evicting the tribals from the forest. After evicting the tribals from the forest, to earn more income, British government gave forest land to zamindars and landlords for crop cultivation. In return, British government got high land revenue from zamindars and landlords and earned more profit. Okay, children, in those days, during British rule, tribals have small lands in the forest. During British rule, tribals have small lands in the forest. This British gave permission for tribals to cultivate the crop in their small land. In return, tribals should pay high land revenue to the British government. In return, the tribals should pay high land revenue for the British government. These tribals, they didn't have sufficient money to pay high land revenue to the British government. These tribals didn't have sufficient money to pay high land revenue to the British government. So they took loan from the money lenders. And paid the high land revenue to the British government. Later, when they failed to repay the loan back to money lenders, money lenders occupied the tribals' land. Now, tribals lost the land. At last, tribals worked as a coolies under zamindars and landlords. To protect the forest department planted new trees. To conserve forest, to protect the forest department planted new trees, harvested agricultural crops in the forest, and cut to old tree. In the place of old tree, they planted new trees. The officials of forest department belong to rich community. Rich community felt the tribals are ignorant. They are dangerous people and they don't have sympathy. Rich officials of forest department belong to rich community. Rich communities felt the tribals are ignorant people, they are dangerous people and they didn't have sympathy. So the rich communities harassed the tribal, tortured the tribal, cheated the tribal, occupied the tribal's land, tribal's property. Between 1920 and 1940, Forest Department took an operation. Between 1920 and 1940, Forest Department took an operation under a new law. Under that law, they force the tribals to evict from the forest, to live away from the forest in a large scale. Thus, insecurity caused for the tribals. Once again, this point, children, I would like to revise this point once again. Between 1920 and 1940, Forest Department enacted a new law. Under this new law, in one stroke, the tribals lost their rights over land, and they are forced to evict from the forest in large scale. This causes insecurity from the tribals. When tribals got insecurity to live in the forest, when tribals felt insecurity to live in the forest because of Forest Department act, because of Forest Department work, tribals got angry. They did a revolt against the Forest Department under British rule. The northeastern tribals did a revolt against the British government, against the Forest Department of British rule. They won some protection from the British. Once again, children, listen carefully. Between 1920 and 1940, new laws enacted by the Forest Department. Under this new law, tribals lost the right to a forest. Now, officials of Forest Department forced the tribals to live away from the forest on large scale. Thus, it causes insecurity for the tribals. The tribals felt insecurity to live in the forest as the work done by the Forest Department officials. So, tribals got angry on Forest Department. Tribals got angry on British rule. So, tribals did a revolt against British rule and Forest Department. In northeastern tribals did a revolt against Forest Department under British rule. They won some protection from British. After India got independence, our national leaders debated. Whether tribal people should live the traditional life to live in the forest, or the tribal people should adapt to practice settled agriculture, or to adopt modern education, or to work in industries. After India got independence, our national leaders debated whether tribal people should live the traditional life to live in the forest, or the tribal people should adapt to practice settled agriculture, or to get modern education, or to work in industries. Children, so far we discussed about tribal people and forest. I hope you understand this topic. If not, first read the topic from the textbook, then you see my video. You will understand very much better. Otherwise, see this video again, so that you can understand more better. If not, we will explain this topic in the June class, children. Thank you, children, for watching my videos. We will meet you next video. Thank you. Bye-bye.